I don't understand why people don't get this concept. Like, a lot of people I talk to will not touch Abbotsford as an investment. They just won't do it. They say things like, oh, well, won't Surrey appreciate more? Or won't, Vancouver appreciate more? And Abbotsford doesn't see the same appreciation as all these other places because it's further away. And isn't the vacancy rate higher and the tenant pool is worse? So in this video, I'm going to be quelling those objections. So first things first, I'm going to kill this narrative that Abbotsford doesn't appreciate as well as everywhere else because it's further away. Okay, so here is an Abbotsford versus Surrey on a line graph, and notice how both the lines on this graph are exactly the same. So let's pull up Abbotsford versus Langley. Oh, they're exactly the same. Now, if we pull up Abbotsford versus Surrey over the last 10 years, you will find that if we take the numbers that each of these cities started at 10 years ago and we divide them by our current prices, or vice versa, you will find that Abbotsford has appreciated 2.63 times versus Surrey's appreciation of 2.58 times. So their appreciation over the last 10 years has been pretty much exactly the same, with Abbotsford coming slightly on top. So let's actually run the numbers on this. So let's just say you bought this property in Surrey, this average price property. And in this scenario, you would have bought it for $435,000 10 years ago, and it's now worth $1.123 million for a total gain of $688,000. Your initial down payment on that $435,000 was 20%, which is $87,000, meaning you made $688,000 on your $87,000 investment, which would be a total return of 7.9x. And in the Abbotsford scenario, over the last 10 years, you bought the property for $311,000 and it's now worth $819,000, meaning you made $508,000 on your investment. 20% down on that initial $311K would have been $62,000, meaning you've invested $62,000 to make $508,000, which sounds like less money. But because you've invested less money as well, the return is actually 8.2x versus Surrey's 7.9x, so roughly 30% more. So although Surrey, in a dollar value, did appreciate more than Abbotsford, because Abbotsford was starting from a lower price point, you were able to invest less money at that 20% down, and although the overall dollar return was less, the percentage was higher because you put in less money. Now, the appreciation, I truly believe you're pretty much going to appreciate the same wherever you buy in Vancouver's metro area. But the main reason why you should buy in Abbotsford over Surrey or anywhere west of Surrey is the fact that your cash flow would have been much better in Abbotsford during that 10-year period. Now, I'm not going to break down the rents because they just change so much from area to area and property to property. But one thing I know for certain is that rent doesn't change very much from Abbotsford to Surrey. Yet the purchase price for a house in Surrey is like 25% more than it is in Abbotsford. So typically on a detached house in Surrey, you might get an extra $400 to $500 a month rent than you would in Abbotsford. However, in Abbotsford, your mortgage costs like $1,000 a month more, possibly even more, maybe $1,400, $1,500 or more per month, meaning you're saving an extra, $500 to $1,000 a month buying that rental property in Abbotsford. So not only is the ROI higher, but we're not even counting the ROI in the cash flow that you would have gotten during that 10-year period. Even if you didn't cash flow, whatever, you're losing less money every month, even if it's negative cash flow, is what I'm saying. And the reason why pretty much everywhere appreciates the same is basically because of supply and demand. I like to call it that our market moves kind of like a landslide, right? Vancouver goes up in price, people get priced out. The next best place they move is Burnaby. Because of all the excess demand of new people moving into Burnaby, Burnaby goes up in price, people get priced out, they move to Coquitlam, and that literally landslides all the way down to Hope. You, because of supply and demand, are never going to have a scenario where the average price of a detached home in Langley is $1.5 million, and then 20 minutes down the road in Abbotsford, they're $1 million. And if that ever does happen, you can be rest assured that people are going to see that difference in valuation and they're going to start buying in Abbotsford, and that will bid up the prices very quickly to match the normal balance that should be between Langley and Abbotsford. So basically what happens is if Langley appreciates $200K and Abbotsford's down here, you can bet that Abbotsford will also appreciate $200K to close that gap and make things all equal like they should be. There should always be a price gap between Langley and Abbotsford because Langley is closer to Vancouver. But the second that gap gets too wide, people are like, well, it makes way more sense for me to just move an extra 20 minutes away if I'm paying this price. Therefore, prices get bid up again, and that gap, that constant gap gets maintained. Now, the only difference here is that although they both appreciate 200,000, again, because Abbotsford is starting at a lower price point, your ROI is higher buying in Abbotsford. And I know people were worried about the vacancy rate, so pulling it up here, the vacancy rate in Abbotsford Mission right now is about 2.1%, which is actually high for Abbotsford, probably the highest I've ever seen it. And it's usually around less than 1% or around 1%, but regardless, we're talking about a 2% vacancy here. I mean, in the States, it's normal for investors to buy into markets that are 5 to 8% vacancy. We're talking about 2% here. So what are the downsides? Why aren't people buying in Abbotsford? There has to be a reason why people aren't buying in Abbotsford as an investment, and why everybody wants Surrey, Langley, Burnaby, Vancouver. Well, to be honest with you guys, I can't objectively find one. Like, if I look at the statistics, I can't find anything that would tell you that it's not a good idea to invest in Abbotsford and that you'd be better off buying in Surrey or Langley. I really can't. Before, I would have said that, well, you know, because Abbotsford is further away, it's probably harder to liquidate those properties in a down market, and therefore you might get stuck holding the bag, whereas, you know, Vancouver typically sits in a sales ratio year round and things like that. However, I actually looked into the statistics, and what I found is that if we look at Surrey sales ratios versus Abbotsford over the last 10 years, it's an identical chart. And if we look at Vancouver versus Abbotsford over the last 10 years, you'll see that sometimes Vancouver is selling through a little bit better than Abbotsford, but then there's other times that Abbotsford is selling through a little bit better than Vancouver. So objectively and statistically speaking, I can't find a reason why you would want to invest in Surrey or Vancouver or Langley or any of these places over Abbotsford. So look, this is my opinion on this. I would personally rather own in Abbotsford, where my upfront capital risk is less. I'm putting less money down. The ROI is statistically higher. The cash flow is higher, which is, again, reducing my potential risk. So statistically speaking, it is lower risk, higher reward to invest in Abbotsford versus Surrey or anywhere west of Surrey. So that's that. Hope this helps. If it did, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video, you're definitely gonna like the video I put out on cash flow, so make sure you watch that one. I'm That Agent Kelly, and I'm making moves to move you. Peace.